my promises. You know I'm too generous. Now I've learned to never help you out. 'Cause I'm done cleaning up your mess. Found myself in my regrets. I've become a little stronger now. A little stronger now. You stole my heart of gold after my silver soul. Can you dig any deeper now? I gave you all I own, put you on this golden throne, but I'm a little stronger now. You cashed in on my promises. You know I'm too generous. Now I've learned to never help you out. 'Cause I'm done cleaning up your mess. Found myself in my regrets. I've become a little stronger now. A little stronger now. You cashed in on my promises. You know I'm too generous. Now I've learned to never help you out. 'Cause I'm done cleaning up your mess. Found myself.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy G-Max here, also known as George Smith, and we are here for the RaceFace Grand Finale for Season 2 here at Suzuka. And I'm glad to welcome back Stephen Koenig back into the booth alongside me as we are about to come into the last 10 minutes of quali, Stephen.
Thank you very much for having me, and a big thanks to the sim racing community for allowing me back and not beating me up with chains. But a rainy Suzuka for the grand finale. I mean, this is the ultimate way to take the championship and turn it onto its head.
Absolutely. I mean, this is what we needed to sort of throw a little spanner in the works as well. A little bit of wet environment for the guys to have to contend with out on track. And of course, we are here in the qualifying session at the moment. The guys have been out on track for the last 20 minutes. They have been trying their best to set their best times. And as it stands at the moment, this is our current our current leaderboard and how things stand, Stephen. So Bruno Kidili from White Rabbit up in first, and of course his teammate Jason Absmeyer sitting in a provisional second place. Both of them doing 208s here at the moment. And in third, we've got King doing a 209. Then we've got a whole bunch of 209s down the grid. We've got King, Bago Groble in fourth, Arno Visaki in fifth, Francis Vogel in sixth, Johannes Kreiling in seventh. We've got Masters and Patterson battling out there for 8th and 9th. They are literally just a couple thousands off of each other. And we got Charles Wilkin in 10th place. So a little bit of an interesting qualifying going on at the moment. Kruger's going to go and set that pole position lap for the moment in his Lexus. And of course, I mentioned it before, Stephen, the Lexus is quite powerful in the rain.
No, absolutely. I think the weight is going to play a big advantage, especially in the rain and around Suzuka. We know that the front engine cars tend to do a little bit better than the likes of, let's just say, the Porsche around the circuit. But it's nice to see the names that from last weekend that were struggling, like Arno Visaki, lying in 6th place. Hopefully he can keep the car on the circuit. But Patterson and Masters, I think that is definitely one to watch. And also take a look, 7th place, Vogel. Now, he's one that last week was actually climbing up slowly but surely, and I think he's going to be a very dangerous contender coming on to Suzuka. But definitely, it's going to be a absolute fun run around the circuit with the rain. Going to be very greasy. It's going to be slipping and sliding around the circuit, and it's no more just a race. It's a ballet in some parts of the corners, and I think it's also just trying to stay alive. Because if you can keep consistent, you can keep it on the black stuff, you can get all the way up to the top of that grid very, very quickly.
Absolutely, Stephen. And I just need to quickly rejoin into the session so that we can get our live timings going properly on my side. Obviously, we sometimes encounter a couple of bugs, and this is just one of them. So let me just make sure that we get back into the server cleanly. Let me make sure that the splits are back up on my side. Of course, to bring all the action to you guys live on track. So we're rejoining on the server side of things. Stephen, I'm excited again to be here, like I said. So I'm glad that you took back my offer and came back and joined again as we jump on board here with Strauss in his Audi. I'll get us into a different camera angle shortly.
It's absolutely, thank you very much for having me. And also a big thank you to our viewers that we're coming to you live in your homes, pretty much like a wrecking ball. Big thank you to you guys. Nice to see all the different teams, even the people that do not participate in the league, and also people that have participated coming to watch the grand finale. And I mean, Strauss has been on form with his driving. He's been pressing non-stop, lying in that 14th position with the Audi. Now, I drive the Audi in the ACC, and I gotta say, it's a very interesting car to do in the rain. It's actually a lot more grippy than you think, and especially if you pick the ride height up a little bit, you can touch the curbs. But it's no match to Kruger in that Lexus, who is absolutely powering lap after lap. Nice to see Kruger on the top of that leaderboard, and I think he's really looking to try and change things up, going back from last week, where he was trying everything he could to climb up the grid, but Absmeyer completely ran away with it last week. No, absolutely. And we both had two different perspectives from chatting to these guys. I was sitting in the Retro Sim Racing Discord and listening to the guys, and Escher was busy saying, guys, we've got to get to the top there oh no, there's no backing out, there's keeping on the black stuff, and you have to show what you can do. So the tension is down there, and we say Discord, but to me, it's the pits. The tension is there, and what's the atmosphere like for coming from White Rabbit Gaming, knowing that the Constructors Championship is right there? Yeah, the Boatleys. Well, I'm a big fan of the Audis, but the Boatleys, the Bentleys, have been always a very interesting car for me. One, it's extremely heavy car, rather big and wide, and they usually do so well. But unfortunately, the guys seem to be battling with the cars in the wet and around Suzuka. I'm not sure if the car is just very difficult to set up for Suzuka, but the guys are really doing everything they can with it. Maybe in the race they can do it. I know Chang to Jason Isherwood, he says that the Bentleys aren't great qualifiers, but they definitely better in the race. They can manage the cars a bit better. So hopefully that's going to help them through it. But they've definitely got their work cut out for them going into the race. But for the guys at home, we've also got to mention there is a twist. We do have a handicap system where some of these drivers are driving with extra weight in their cars. And that is also going to play a bit into it, because as the fuel starts to go, your car gets a little bit lighter. But as you can see, Kadiri having an extra 10 kgs chucked onto his car, Abshai with 50 kgs in that Porsche to throw around. And that's definitely going to play a bit into it with the rain, managing your tires, trying to flick that car around in the rain. It's going to be rather interesting to see how these guys are going to be able to take that next step to push themselves up through the grid. But Kadili and Abshai, they're having no problem there, putting in second and third right behind Kruger.
Yeah, so my mic was apparently not working for the whole segment that we got to chat there about the championships and things. So my apologies out to the stream. Hopefully you guys can hear me loud and clear this time around. So we come down into 2 minutes left of quali. I don't even know what I've said and what hasn't been heard, but probably nothing really from my side. So it's a bit of a surprise and a mystery, really, where I feel on your questions, right, Stephen? But definitely excited about the White Rabbit standings and the potential here for the championship to go their way. Unfortunately, I am unable to fix some of the sound issues that we have encountered during the season, and hopefully during our next season such things will not happen. The crackling, the popping, the strange anomalies that I've encountered, things that I've tried to diagnose during the season and just not really seem to go away. So we are back, and I'd just like to shout out to our viewers out in the chat. Carl Petzner, of course, I'm giving him a little shout out because He has not been able to join for any of the comms. He's been super excited to do so. Unfortunately, his situation has not led him to be able to get into the booth, but he's been here, a loyal fan and supporter of the racing. So a little shout out to Kyle and, of course, the rest of our RaceFace chat fam that are here and supporting the races. I hope that you guys are ready for a good round of racing, because with 1 minute left of quali, there's only a couple of cars left out on circuit to see if they can better their times. Johan Bego Grobler being one of them from Team Wolf of the RaceFace team. Of course, he's driving around in the Merc, and Bertus Hugo drives around in the Bentley. Steven's favorite, second favorite, third favorite. I'm not even sure. He seems to love all the cars. He's just a car lover. I can't pick at which one, Steven, you really would pick to drive if I was giving you one. I mean, I know you have setups for everything. What do you think of the Merc?
I've only driven the Audi, believe it or not. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to drive any of the other vehicles, and I've been driving. I'm yet to go around Barcelona, which I'm going to be driving around this weekend. But heading into the race, 18 corners, and also we've got to remember with Suzuka, we've got the 6 hour coming to it, so these are also trying to work it out there. But first place goes to Kruger, second Kadili, third Abschmeyer, fourth King. Then we got Grobler, Versaki, Vogel. We got Masters, Patterson, and Grayling lying in 10th place. 11th place is Wilkin, 12th place Rowe, 13th place Grobler, followed by Strauss, Antel, von Monsberg. I mean, you check at the times, they are so close to one another. I mean, the top three are literally split by 0.4 of a second. It's going to be a bit of a run.
Phenomenal lap coming out as well from Kruger there. Really just showing some incredible pace. Of course, Bruno and Jason driving with some ballast. 10 kgs for Bruno, 50 for Jason for winning last week. Then Patterson riding along with 30 kgs on board for Grayling in the Lambo, and 40 kgs for Wilkin in that Porsche. So that ballast going to be playing into effect definitely during the qualifying session, and most certainly going to roll over into the race as well. So we're about to go live over onto our grid in a couple of seconds. Qualifying should roll over. Our session at the moment is wet, and our race looks wet too. So according to our little race controller, he says that you must remember to brake early. So hopefully that's what our drivers will remember coming into the first two corners at Suzuka. That can be an absolute handful in the dry. In the wet, it's going to be it's going to be a difficult scenario, but these are our pro splits, so I know that they're going to manage it okay. But I do know that the pressure of being in that field whilst that goes down is going to be immensely difficult to have to contend with.
Well, you think of it, they've got a few things going for them. One, it's the final race of the season that the championship is still up in the air. Two, it's a wet Suzuka. I mean, that's already a handful by itself. So you can be sure the nerves are there. The guys are really hoping to try and push their way up, really end on a high. And so it's going to be interesting to see who can keep their cool under these conditions. But I've got to say, it's all fun and games. But now, as the top commentator for sim racing in South Africa, what is your thoughts? What do you think? What's your expectations of the race? What do you think is going to unfold in front of us for this hour and 25 minutes of absolute craziness for the final race of the GT3 championship for RaceFace?
So, I mean, Stephen obviously slipped one of the unknowns into the booth with him. The top commentator in South Africa was unable to join us for the broadcast. However, the next hour and 25 minutes is going to be brutal. There's obviously going to be a mandatory tire change for these guys to complete their pit stops. That's all that they have to do within the pit window. An hour and 25 minutes in the wet. It's all about making sure that you can get to the finish line. There's a championship drivers battle up on the cards. We've got Retro Sim, Slipstream taking on White Rabbit, and of course, We've also got a driver's battle on the cards. Bruno and Charles Wilkin are fighting for that number 1 spot. Bruno, of course, needs to finish ahead of Charles to secure that. So it's going to be intense. I cannot wait. We're leading off for our formation lap. We've got Brandon Kruger in his Lexus leading us away as he makes his way through curve 2 on his way towards the S's, and a snake of single formation GT3 cars lines up behind him. It is a wet afternoon here at Suzuka for the grand finals of the RaceFace Season 2 season, and it has been a great 9 races before this. This 10th race, I hope, does not disappoint us, and you know what? With what I've seen, it's not going to disappoint us. We've had rain before, well, we've had rain races before in terms of seeing what guys can do in the wet, but this is really where it is going to be all on the line for these guys to show us what they're made of.
Well, I can tell you, if I had a webcam on right now, you would see the goosebumps on me, because it is just, the excitement is there. And, you know, Kruger's got to feel quite happy about this. Putting the Lexus in first around Suzuka, I mean, right car for the right track in the right country. So at least it's going and showing a bit of support there. But it's going to be rather interesting to see how these guys go. It's all about holding out there. Arno Fasaki from the Retro Sim has been informed by the team captain of Jason Isherwood, you have to get to the front. You have no other option. So the pressure is on him to try and get all the way to take on Abschmeyer and Cudley. And it's going to be very difficult because the teammates there are going to work well together. They're going to try and keep at each other's slipstream and defend their positions as hard as they can. At the same time, they are racing each other. So it's all hands on the cards. We've got Rowe in that beautiful pink Ferrari. I mean, it's a proper standout. And it shows you can have men racing pink, no problem.
I mean, that was never a question for me. I think my colors would definitely involve pink. If you were to look into my wardrobe, I've got a variety of different colored pink underpants for sure, and matching socks to boot. So Daniel Rowe, of course, from G-Force Sim. They're a sim rig building company, I believe, and you know, good to see some represented teams out here. We've got Paul Gaber from Team Tryhard Racing Pro, also with a beautiful design livery. It's basically the McLaren copied over, as Ryan Gill would say, my fellow RCI commentator. I believe he's in the chat as well. Shout out to Ryan, shout out to Shani, shout out to Alvain as well, our White Rabbit leader, here to see the White Rabbit boys perform on track. Down to Corne Strauss as he makes his way down the back stretch. He's gathered up behind the Porsche of Gaber. EKZ being, or EKZ should I say, being represented here by Corne Strauss in that Audi. Just a mid-pack of names that we know, a front pack of names that we know, and a good bit of racing as our leaders start to bunch the pack up 2 by 2 up towards the Casio chicane, or we can just call it the chicane. I don't know that Casio still sponsors it, and they don't deserve our airtime because they don't sponsor us. So just the chicane for now. And Brandon Kruger will go through alongside Bruno Cadley, of course. I mean, you just made me call him Cadley, and it's not Cadley, it's Cadili. And he is Cadley, but he needs to retake his position in second there, and he does so. So it will be the inside line for Kruger as we are about to go lights green here at Suzuka for the final time and the final round of the RaceFace season. Just a beautiful sight to see these GT3 cars with their lights on in the rain, and it is any second now that they will be preparing to floor that. We see all the cars now lined up here. A couple of cars not exactly lined up, but greens are go, and the cars are now making their way down towards the first corner, and it will be Kruger to defend, but a great start from Kadili. He's going round the outside, and pressure being mounted already. Kruger wants to stick to the inside line, and he does. He is under attack from both White Rabbits. Oh, big squiggle coming out from Jason Absmeyer in third place there as Keegan Masters looks to capitalize on it as well. But all our cars currently getting through okay as they're making their way through the S's. No big changes in position up front, but in the mid-pack, it is absolutely anyone's battle. For the moment, our leaders go up towards Dunlop. It will be Bruno and Jason putting pressure on one another. Teammates with Keegan Masters in that pink Porsche on the back end of that White Rabbit Porsche.
Definitely, it's going to be a bit of an interesting one. That the teammates are trying to push each other, and I think Masters is seeing this and wants to capitalize on it. Patterson as well trying to move up through the grid. Vasaki falling a little bit behind, but you can see Masters has got quite a view. The more he stays in that spray, the less visibility he has. But you can see the teammates, Abschmeyer now diving up, looking to go on the outside, gets back into the tow as our top 4 cars start trying to pull away. But, whoa! Panini going off into the dirt and getting taken out. Oh, and takes out Arno Vasaki in the process. Oh my heavens, it's a bit of a change-up, and Arno, unfortunately, collateral damage there. Kruger running away from it. Kadidi trying to get back together, nearly taking on Isherwood as he's really struggling with that car. He's got quite a bit of severe damage on it, but he is looking to limp it back to the pits as much as possible. But that has left Abschmeyer to take on Masters by himself as they push towards Kruger heading into the hairpin. And I mean, this little corner here can be a make or break. You can dive on the inside if you're brave enough and you know the drivers, but can really mess up a race in a hurry. Wilkins with the brightest livery on the circuit, also making a big attack on Grayling, and he was having a good fun there. Vogel unfortunately coming off into the circuit at the back, and Ansel trying to get in that slipstream as well. So a bit of a change up right in lap number 1, and definitely not what Kadili wanted heading into this race.
Big mistakes being made early on, pushing each other early on from the White Rabbit boys, and unfortunately on the wet stuff, the back end of that Merc just seemed to kick out, and that's a big change up for the championship positions. Of course, Kadili needed to finish ahead of Charles Wilkin, and right now Charles Wilkin currently sitting in 6th place. So it's, it could even get down to deeper maths than that. There could be positional differences that they need to finish now in terms of the points that Wilkin needs to catch up to Kadili. But that's racing for you, and with an hour and 22 minutes, I expect more changes to be made throughout the order. But for now, it will be Brandon Kruger leading on Jason Abschmeyer, Keegan Masters in 3rd, Patterson in 4th, Grayling in 5th, and Charles Wilkin holding it down 6th place as we follow around. We see Antel in the background there. He's got a lot of pressure coming in from Vogel. We saw Vogel making a mistake at that Casio chicane, or I'm not going to call it that again, the chicane, Vogel now under attack from Bego Grobler from behind in that Mercedes, which is going to give Antel, who we're riding on board here, with a little bit of breathing room. But for now, it is still intense racing, even though we are into essentially only lap 2 of this race for the drivers to be out on track in these conditions. And the tires are definitely still going to be showing them what they've got. They're going to be learning the grip levels as that dry line starts to form up. I mean, you can already see it starting to form up early on here. There's just a lot of cars putting a lot of rubber onto the circuit and forcing that surface water out of the way. Ansel and Vogel trying to have a little dance towards the 130R. Not a place that you want to do that. Ansel in the Porsche probably not going to feel as comfortable as the Aston Martin coming through there, and that's allowed Grobler to get alongside Vogel coming into the chicane there. Vogel under attack from Grobler. Grobler just needs to hold it down. Vogel on the inside. Grobler is on the dry stuff there, on the dry line. A solid move to get past on Vogel. So Bego Grobler moves himself up into 8th place, but it's not done yet. Vogel still wants to attack. Bego Grobler doesn't want to hold that inside line. Of course, he wants to stay on the dry line. Vogel also opting to just tuck back into that. But a good bit of driving coming out from the RaceFace driver as we continue to look down towards the back of the order. I see Strauss, Gabe, Sienoren giving themselves a little bit of a car gap between each other before they get into the fray. Gabe and Vogel teammates now on track and in position with each other, needing to work their way together through the order.
That's the thing. You got to communicate with your teammate now and just say, listen, mate, I'm a little bit quicker than you. Give me a bit of space. And we saw, unfortunately, when two teammates push each other to the limit a bit early on, and unfortunately, White Rabbit Gaming having that problem. Let's see if Vogel and Herber can work together. Vogel looking to go on the attack. He went in that hang back a little bit against Grobler, and is really just trying to hang in a bit. Interesting to see. Grobler tries to move around, it dances around the circuit with that Merc, and I wonder if he's struggling just to find that little bit of breathing room and keep the car in check. Strauss now starting to catch onto the back of Curver, And this is going to be a problem for him as he's trying to stay on that dry line. The problem is it's very dangerous now. They want to all be on the dry line, but you have to take a deep breath and nail it up through on the wet line and manage to hold it. Versace, unfortunately, right down the back of the grid, and definitely not what he wanted.
I mean, that's not Versace's fault there. I mean, I think that Bruno's rejoin onto the circuit potentially going to be looked into the stewards. What we saw there, we couldn't really gather. I mean, you are a bit of a passenger at those speeds coming out at 200R, but definitely seemed to collide with Versace, and a big collision at that. So Bruno's been knocked down the field. He's still down the order now. He's going to be a back marker. He hasn't yet completed his mandatory stop in doing his repair because, of course, the pit window wasn't open. So that's not going to benefit him at all. And he's going to have to fight his way back through the order along with this man, Arno Versace, as we switch back to our race leader for a brief second, which is Brandon Kruger, running away from Jason Absmeyer in second place. Jason carrying 50 kilos of ballast, so that's a heavy car. And the Lexus loving the rain and loving Suzuka, and Kruger seems to have it dialed in perfectly. So Keegan Masters in third place. He's going to be chasing down onto the back of Jason Absmeyer. Our next battle on track will still remain between Grobler and Vogel. Vogel not happy that Grobler got by Steven and wants to give him a bit of beans himself.
Definitely, it's the battle between the Germans and the British once again as the Mercedes and Aston take each other on, and Antle is just enjoying this. He's opening a little bit of a gap between himself and the rest, but you can see Vogel is not hanging around, pulling away from his teammate, and is looking for any kink in the armor of Grobler to make a way past. So he has to take a deep breath and try and dive him somewhere, but Grobler going into the spoon seems a little bit quicker. And let's see if he can carry it through. Now we know the spoon is a little bit of a double apex, heading right down into our little how can I say it's
no he just went through hairpin there. He's only coming up to spoon now, so here's spoon for him, and he's run very wide into it. Vogel hasn't. Vogel's actually had a much better corner, but still that gap that Grobler had pulled at the hairpin has given him that sort of breathing room to stay away from Vogel. Interesting enough, Grobler driving alongside on the wet line, so perhaps struggling to keep those tires cool on the dry stuff. His tire pressures may be getting a bit warm, and trying to just cool them down by driving on the wet line for a little bit.
That's definitely, and he's watching his rearview mirror like a hawk because Vogel is all around the back of him. He knows that Grobler's there as well, so definitely going through his mind is he's got two teammate cars close by, plus he's got Antle in front of him that is so close, 0.8 seconds away, so he's trying to get into that tow as well, but definitely looks like he is struggling to try and keep those time pressures down. Vulcan under a bit of pressure from Kraling, and Cadley also trying to get onto the back of him in that Mercedes, really trying everything he can. Antle looking to go on the attack as well. Kraling trying to just push his way up, but doesn't seem to have the same pace going into the S's that Vulcan's got, actually.
Yeah, you know, the Lambo in the wet, probably a little bit of a dancing queen, as Kraling going to have to really play with the ballet pedals there to make sure that he keeps it on the black stuff. Gedilio, of course, being that lap down means that he's going to try and maintain his pace so that he doesn't have to drop off to guys that need to pass him for position. But of course, Kraling is feeling the pressure of Kadili trying to unlap himself. Of course, the pace of, you know, one of the front leaders that has dropped back is going to be something that the mid-pack has to deal with. And Kadili really is trying his best to get by. Antle going to go up on the inside as Kadili, not wanting to yield that position, does eventually give it by. And, you know, doing the right thing and letting Antle by. That's unfortunate for Kadili, as I just want to see where that other battle was. I think it was Jason Gray, who is on in a battle currently with, I believe, Neil Berger in that Porsche. So Jason Gray here from Retro Sim Electro, the Bentley versus the Porsche, and both of them with some dashing colors on board as well. So if we follow the rear spoiler cam here from Gray, we'll see Berger coming out the exit of Spoon as they make their way down the back stretch on their fourth lap here with an hour and 14 minutes of racing. Still so many things to change up.
Definitely, and this is a bit of an interesting one between the two, because the Porsche being a mid-engine, you would think would be a little bit better. Gray going off the circuit, really outbraking himself there, and that's just given Berger the opportunity to run away. It's very, very tricky. That little kink there can catch you out so quickly if you're not wide awake, especially also going into the chicane. But you can see Gray going and sliding the Bentley out. Krayling still under a massive amount of pressure from Antle. Antle looking left and right as we dive on board, and you can see in that cockpit review mirror, it's Antle all the way. Kadili also just trying to get into the toe of Antle and get pulled along. But Antle is like a cat on a hot tin roof, looking for any way to get past. Oh, slower car though, one of the Bentleys. It's crawling around the circuit.
That looks like Isherwood. I believe that's...
Isherwood.
So Isherwood's had some issues. He's let some cars get by. I'm not quite sure what's happening with Isherwood, but he's dropped down the order. But that's allowed a couple of guys to get on by. I see that Krayling has spun off the circuit, so he's dropping down the order. And Krayling there just not able to deal with the pressure being amassed onto the back of him. So now it'll be Grobler, Gerber, and Strauss to battle for positions. So Strauss up to 9th place for EKZ Motorsports. A beautiful little battle starting to unfold. Bego Grobler going to be the man under attack as he's got Gerber and Strauss closing down that gap. King as well in the Lexus is entering into the arena too. Spoon is going to be a make or break here for Grobler. He needs to nail the exit so that he's got the back stretch to not lose time to the cars behind. He's got them sitting in the slipstream or trying to get into it, and for now it looks like Grobler doing a good job to just put a couple of cars between him and the danger behind. But 7th place for Grobler, a great start to the race so far, and of course mandatory pit stop still to come when that pit window opens up.
Definitely, and these guys have to be very careful on the brakes on the wet stuff, because if you can really lock it up very quickly and you can be sure that the traction controls are working overtime. But the other way the guys are using to try and gain a little bit more speed and a bit more control on the cars is trail braking. In other words, going and not just standing on the brake and going straight off it, changing the weight in the vehicle of where it is, but trying to just ease it up a little bit so it's not bouncing on the shocks the whole time. As you can see, Strauss chasing Herber and giving everything he can. Grobler going and sliding the car out. So is Strauss in that Audi. And you can see Strauss is pushing hard in that EKZ Audi to go after Herber, but looks into the S's, hasn't got quite the same pace. King looking to push up in that Lexus as well to try and join the Lexus brother, and lying in 1st place.
Yeah, Kruger just running away with things, as we said before. He's now got a 7-second gap to Jason Absmeyer, and then Kieran Patterson sits 12 seconds behind our leader as it stands. So Kieran Patterson, also a man that is in contention for that championship battle. I mean, Wilkin, he's already... He kind of needed what happened to Kadili to happen to give him some sort of chance. That's already happened. If something happens to Wilkin, then Patterson could potentially be our championship winner, sitting down in 3rd place. You know, based on points, I believe he can get up there. So there really is a knife fight for the championship. Charles Wilkin currently doing a great job for Sarko in that multicolored Porsche. He's in 5th place, carrying 40 kilos of ballast as well. So for now, he's doing exactly what he needs to do to find himself as close up to Bruno as he can get. I need to do some maths on my side to just double check the gap between them. So do you want to take us away a little bit while I do some maths, Stephen?
Yeah, why not? As you can see, Wilkin really doing everything he can in that Porsche, heading into our little chicane. Strauss now under pressure from King, as King's looking left and right in that Lexus to try and get past the EKZ Audi of Strauss. And Strauss also chasing down Herber. He's got a little bit more momentum getting out of the final bend, getting into the toe on the dry lines. Let's see if that's going to make it count. But King in that toe as well. And this is where it's going to get tricky. Strauss has to be very careful heading into turn 1. King right on the inside now, looking for side-by-side action. King dives up on the inside, managing to hold it, gets it on the dry line, and gets a serious amount of momentum out there, using the slingshot, getting ahead of Strauss, and now looking to keep on charging. Strauss is not done yet, heading into the S's. He's got the momentum in that Audi and is really pushing as hard as he can. But Herbert does not want to be anywhere near these two, as they have something to prove right now, as being in the wet. The last thing you want to have is lots and lots of pressure. But touching onto the dirt and losing our position to King. Herbert going and losing a position, and looks like Strauss wants to capitalize on this. Strauss touching the dirt as well, managing to hold it, gets into the King. And both cars going sideways, but you can see Herbert really pushing, Strauss doing everything he can, look to try and capitalize like King. But unfortunately, Herbert closing that door firmly shut, and now has to try and make up a bit of ground.
Brave.
Sure, he's kicking himself there.
Brave bit of driving coming out from Strauss to try go around the outside of Dunlop curb onto Gabba coming into Degner 1. Did a great job to maintain his position on the inside line through Degner 1. Did look like he was about to lose the back end. And I think a little angel on his shoulder said, "Stop pushing, Cornet. You got to hold this. We've got an hour left of racing." And he kind of backed off and now will amass the attack onto Gabba at a later stage to try and, find a safer place to get by. There's not a lot of passing opportunities here, but we saw Gabba making the mistake out of Dunlop, and that was where he lost out to King. So if Strauss can just keep the pressure on and just continue what he's doing here, Gabba possibly will just, make that mistake. Strauss, though, wants to still look. He's trying to put pressure on through the chicane. Gabba has a rear window just occupied by that Audi, and a great run coming out from Strauss here. This could be a potential opportunity for Strauss to make the move. He's tucked into the slip. He's going on the inside line. He wants to do what happened to him. He wants the inside line, and he's going to make it stick. Will Gabba be able to get the cutback onto Strauss? Strauss beautifully mastering the Audi there to get the move done, and a beautiful bit of driving to make a safe overtake onto Gabba there as he gets on through the S's. Gabba a couple of car lengths off the back and not able to really fight back.
No, definitely a great maneuver, and well done to both drivers to hold it in the wet especially. And I've just got to say one thing. The thing with the Audi is the downforce seems to be mostly on the front of the car. So where he is now is absolutely perfect. Getting caught behind a car, getting into the slipstream is all fantastic, but you lose a lot of grip on that front end, and now he looks to try and run away. But the Porsches have proven to be quite an enemy to the Audi throughout the season, and as we could see it all going. But take a look, Vogel and Krobler duking it out. Kadili also trying to take a look in there, but definitely turning into a good mixed match battle here.
200R, you see those puddles building up. That's going to catch Krobler out. He does a masterful bit of driving to hold the back of that Merc. We saw the same fate not happen to Bruno. He lost it and smashed the wall. He's now a back marker running in 23rd position, hanging on to the back of 7th place, Bego Krobler. He wants to get by to try and unlap himself and try and better himself in the race. But unfortunately for him, it's really not been the start that he needed. But Bego Krobler, he's a man that has had a fantastic start to the race, currently holding down 7th place. He's got Vogel up in front, who he was putting pressure on out of the hip, and unfortunately 200R caught him by surprise. But if you caught up before, you can do it again, and that's always a big bit of mental support to know that you can get up to the driver in front. Even if you make a little mistake and drop off, you can close that gap back down, and that's exactly what Bego Krobler is trying to do. But just look at these guys using different lines coming down the start-finish straight. Everybody sort of trying something different. Everybody running with different tire pressures, I'm sure, and running with a bit of a different strategy in mind. Vogel going very wide out of turn 2, Stephen, and getting it onto those sort of curbs in the wet. They just become so slippery, don't they?
Absolutely. It's one way to lose the car and lose the back end of it. But Vogel managing to hold the slide, and Krobler as well. So beautiful bits of driving with the two. And definitely they're going to put some drift drivers in the highlights zone there. But these guys are really doing everything they can. You can see Vogel every so often getting off that dry line, getting into the wet line, and really trying to make up a bit of ground. Strauss still having a bit of a battle there with Herber. Herber has not given up the chase. And got brilliant drive out of that corner.
Oh, yeah, I mean, Strauss running so wide there as well, just kicking up the dirt. And there's slow cars in front here. Bego Krobler's slow. Vogel's slow. Vogel and Bego Krobler, something's happened there because this has just promoted Strauss up the order. Free positions coming out, and Strauss just benefiting there entirely. So not quite sure what happened coming out of Degner 2, but it looked like a meet and greet happening under the Bridgestone bridge that we weren't invited to, and it looks like Strauss wasn't either, but he's going to run away from them regardless. So now the teammates from Team Tryhard are once again lined up together. Vogel and Gaba need to, again, we've said this before, work together to make their way back through the order. They've got to chase down onto the back of Strauss in his Audi for EKZ. Bego Krobler, I feel like a bit of commentator's curse going his way. He was having a great race the lap before in 7th place. He's dropped down to 10th and has to do all the hard work once again. But luckily for him, Stephen, he's got a whole pack of cars in front.
Definitely, he's got to work his way around. You can see Strauss under tremendous amount of pressure as Vogel and Krobler are not hanging around, and Vogel knows that he can get past with that Aston Martin. You can see the two teammates beautifully lining up behind each other into the slipstream, and there we go, Krobler getting once again off the line and just trying to cool down his tires. Vogel going on a bit of a dive bomb there into turn 1, not able to hold it. Strauss closing the door, but you can see Strauss going a little bit wide. Vogel looking to go side by side. Krobler going side by side with Herber, and it's turning into a bit of a battle into the S's, which is very, very brave to do. Vogel still onto the back of Strauss. Strauss losing a little bit of time as he's trying to control that back end. But you can see the pressure is mounting, and Vogel is on the attack here. Team Tryhard is definitely living up to their name. They are trying hard to get back up through the order. You can be sure Vogel wants to just try and run away from everyone. Strauss getting a fantastic drive, gets a bit twitchy, and really fighting that Audi as much as possible around the circuit.
Doesn't seem to be liking the Degner 2 too much, Stephen. It feels like he needs to be careful going through there. Vogel's putting pressure onto him. It is definitely starting to show in terms of, you know, small little errors that could amount to something. So Strauss needs to keep his head in the game, keep focused. He's having a great drive here in 7th place and wants to hold it down. He's proven lap after lap that he has the defensive lines to do so in the wet. It's so hard to nail those apexes and make sure you don't leave a door open, and you can just see the squirreling of that Aston Martin as he carries so much more speed through the back end of Spoon. And now Strauss, once again, this is the part where, you know, down the back straight, you don't want someone in your slip. Vogel wants it, but Vogel also wants the inside line. He can't go side by side through 130R in the wet here, and we'll tuck back behind Strauss. Strauss really struggling with the Audi's understeer there in the wet, and needs to just be careful that he doesn't exceed track limits either. I mean, the last thing you want to do is get yourself a drive-through penalty, you know, with the pressure being put on from behind, having to exceed the limits at times and not being able to lift off the throttle for fear of losing a position. So once again, the pack opens up, a little bit of a fighter jet formation in the background. Vogel not close enough this time to have that inside look towards Strauss. Strauss going to be counting his blessings. I think his heart was in his throat when Vogel tried that earlier, Stephen.
Oh, definitely so. We actually mentioned last week that the Aston seems to be a lot more of a comfortable drive compared to the twitchy Audi, and it's starting to show a little bit there. Gray getting a little bit sideways as he touches one of those puddles, and he's really battling out there with Berger. And Berger is definitely on the hunt with that Porsche, trying everything he can. Krayling trying to make up a bit of ground as well after having a bit of a fall off in that Aston Martin. Strauss and Vogel looking to go side by side once again.
Yeah, and this is where it was. Degner 2, this is where Vogel's been watching Strauss, and it doesn't, everyone trying to go a little bit too early there. You saw sort of the train following each other. Strauss had made a bit of an error in judging his exit to the first Degner. Vogel couldn't get the move done, so a good bit of driving coming out from both of them to keep it together. It's a very wet track, and pushing to these sort of limits is really pushing the boundaries of where you can, go side by side and get close to one another. It's the braking points are just different, and it depends on how much braking force you've got and how much availability in terms of the line that you're on, that you can get on the brakes. We talked about the exit and the slippery curbs, the losing of grip and loss of exit speed is going to be everything. Vogel still doesn't, I do believe that he is trying to cool down his tires. I mean, he does almost too early commit to the inside line to want to go down to 130R. And Strauss wasn't quite in the availability for Vogel to get into the slipstream either.
I think Vogel is actually just keeping an eye out in case Strauss loses it. Because you can see Strauss, every so often, that back end of the Audi is slipping and sliding underneath him. Strauss looking to go in the middle of the line, trying to run a more defensive line. And Vogel is just keeping into that toe, trying to keep that pressure on. But Strauss is twitchy on the back of that Audi, and it's definitely not liking it. The Audi does have a natural understeer to it, but if you set it up and you set it up a little bit too aggressively, it's got a huge amount of twitch to it where it just wants to slide off a circuit.
Oh, the pressure into the curves coming in from Vogel. He is putting immense pressure on the Audi in front of him. Strauss is doing everything that he can to keep the Aston Martin at bay. Coming around to Dunlop. Vogel has looked here before. Vogel wants to go alongside. Strauss going to be forced off the line, and this is maybe the move for Vogel. Vogel getting it done before the Degner one, and that's a beautiful bit of driving coming out from Vogel. It was all about following Strauss for laps, reading where Strauss was making the move or making the errors that Vogel could make the move clean, and he did so. Strauss now needs to be careful that he doesn't lose out some more to Bego Krobler behind. He just needs to stay on to Vogel's line and maybe learn a thing or two from him. That is one thing. I mean, if you are defending against someone the entire time, when you suddenly get the ability to attack, you've then got control of your braking points, and you can then push things versus them being able to get the read on you the entire time.
Exactly. It's harder to try and race in your rearview mirror than looking out your windshield. Kruger still having a fun run, running away from the grid, and he's really got it nailed down, but he is losing a little bit of time and through the S's with getting a bit sideways, but definitely having a fun one. Abschmeyer in second place heading into turn one, and that could just show you how much of a gap they got, doing 210s around the circuit in the wet. Then we got Patterson in third place, who on his stream, soon as he saw that Kadili got out the race, was jumping up in his seat. King under a bit of pressure from Wilkin as they head into turn one. King lying in fourth place, Wilkin in fifth place. And then we've got Masters lying in sixth. Vogel is seventh, Strauss eighth, and Herber lying in 10th place. And this is going to be a real race right until the end, I think. Strauss losing it though, coming out of T1, and that's it. Touching the water on the side of the circuit, losing the back end, and falling down the grid. I'm sure he's not a happy camper there. Now the thing is, you can't just floor it and get back onto the circuit. You have to gently throttle. Otherwise, you're just going to spin around like there's no tomorrow. But definitely, I'm sure some colourful words are being said under that visor.
Colourful indeed. Much frustration coming out there from Strauss, I'm sure. And he was having such a great race. The pressure was there. We saw that he was struggling with keeping the Audi at bay. And now he needs to just keep his head in the game. He doesn't need this to happen. And that's what I was scared of. The tires are going to be all over the place after the spin. You have to be very easy coming back onto it. And Strauss now just needs to focus again. He's got 55 minutes to make his way back through. You just got to take it on the chin and carry on driving. The likes of Arno Visaki and Bruno Kadili, the same sort of fate to them. They had unfortunate circumstances early on. They currently sit down the order. Arno Visaki has made his way up to 21st. A couple of cars have gone into the pits for their mandatory pit stop. So the likes of Bruno having done that. So interesting coming out from the man who was, up at the front three at the start of the race. Unfortunately, is our championship leader. And in the battle for in the battle against Charles and Patterson, So unfortunate for him, fortunate for them, for him to find himself in this position, but has been into the pits, so trying to get himself up there. Of course, the championship gap between Charles Wilkin in second and Bruno Kedili in first is only 8 points. So if Charles Wilkin continues like he's doing here up in 5th place, this is the championship going towards Wilkin, I believe, if my mathematics is correct.
Well, Patterson, I'm sure, is hoping our commentator's curse would kick in at some point on Wilkin. But Wilkin is really showing he could just keep a cool head and work his way around. But he is chasing after King, and Masters under a huge amount of pressure. Vogel as well taking on with Probler right behind him. But you can see Masters is just doing everything he can in that Porsche. And part of the G-Force Racing. Oh, falling off through the S is not what you want there. Losing out 2 positions as well. And definitely trying to get the hang on the car once again. But Probler, Gerber right behind him, is chasing him down, seeing that there's a chance to catch right onto the back of Masters and possibly go for the overtake as well. Definitely not what Masters wanted. And struggling with the Porsches. It seems like Porsches are not too happy around this circuit.
Stephen, I think you forget that the torrential downpour coming down does not favor them on this circuit particularly. So it is a difficult vehicle to drive around. Of course, being rear engine, the wet here, if the back end does come around or you touch the grass, it can just send you all the way around. So sometimes being able to just ride on through the grass like a bit of a lawnmower is the biggest saving grace. Instead of trying to, steer back onto the apex or the corner. So a good bit of, rain knowledge has been off the circuit before here, obviously during practice, and knows that, rather sacrifice a couple of positions getting back onto the circuit than to lose out to other cars. And you know what? Didn't lose out big time to Gerber, but Gerber is closing down. So Masters needs to be on the defensive in the next couple of laps. So it will be Porsche on Porsche action. So both of them in equally balanced Mercedes. Masters out the back of 130R, catching what looked like it was going to be a tank slapper, going very deep into the chicane. Gerber had a much better exit, but then he comes around in the back end, tries to overtake the front end, and Gerber loses all the hard work. Masters going to duck into the pits, doesn't want the pressure from Gerber, lets Gerber go on about his business.
He's trying to get an early pit, and that's seems to be the strategy for some of the drivers. Get an early pit stop and try circulate it around, because as the tires start to fade, it's going to make conditions a lot harder to drive in. And I think that's where it comes in. Yes, you see Gerber already having the back end go and step out on him every so often. And definitely one thing to do it. But now bringing into one of your favorite chats, the liveries this season that came out from race 1 till now is absolutely amazing. And the guy's putting in such a great effort for RaceFace. I mean, let's talk the Lexus. One that doesn't have too many liveries that can go out for it. But Kruger and King having a beautiful, striking red and white Lexus that you could spot it out from a mile away, having a great run in first place right here.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's something that the community kind of pushed more than the developers did. I know that the developers aren't particularly fond of custom liveries, and in our circumstances, it sometimes does break some of the broadcast abilities. Like I can't jump back to replays during this. It will just sort of freeze up and jump back, and that all seems to be linked to these kind of things. So the sacrifice for beauty is that we sometimes break into the sim, and it's a touchy subject, and I don't want to, don't want people to hate on people for pushing the limits sometimes. So I'm a fan of them. I've created a couple myself. I've got friends that are far more talented in Photoshop helping me out create awesome designs, and I'm a big fan of this Lexus from Kruger. And I'm glad that all the guys that have submitted liveries through have done so that we can have them out on track. Jason Absmeyer also running around in one of our early White Rabbit gaming liveries. This was created by Jason himself and templated across onto all the cars. Bruno has the same sort of one on his Merc. Just a sort of something basic. It actually just fits over a standard paint job. So whatever you paint the car with, you just kind of got like a logos overlay, which is a smaller file. It works quite nicely with cars, and it was fitting for what we needed. And I quite liked the fact that Jason spent some time doing that. The Patterson team, the Patterson Works Racing team. I know that Alan is not racing in this split anymore. I believe he's dropped to a different split. But Alan's created and posted some beautiful works of art, and Kieran rocking one of them here. I'm not sure if Kieran created this one or Alan did, but I know that one of the two did. And again, just this is something that you see driving around. Looks very reminiscent of the 2018 team liveried Porsche from the standard ACC game, but obviously just modified over and changed around. Just beautiful bit of work coming out from the guys doing it. And like you said, King is also up here. We've also got the is it the Retro Sim? Do they have a custom livery yet? Or
yeah, they've got custom liveries that they've set up. Well, actually, they've just got change the colors on the cars, and that's about that.
Okay, so they haven't gone with the full-on customs yet. So I mean, it's still a dashing paint job. I mean, very reminiscent of like 80s Miami theme, right? It's got that retro vibe to it, and fits in with their their sim name, Retro Sim Esports. So these guys, is it the Retro Sim Esports Slipstream team is the one that is fighting for the championship at the moment. So it is a battle on track all across the order. 47 minutes left of racing. 27 minutes remain of this pit window. A couple of our mid-pack have gone into the pits, obviously trying some different strategies up. Our front runners have not yet gone in, I don't believe. So Kruger yet to go in. Absmeyer, Patterson, King, they've all stayed out. Hrobler's not gone in. He's currently trying to get closer to Wilkin, which he is doing. I mean, Wilkin seems to have dropped down a position. He was in 5th. He's dropped down to 6th, with Hrobler closing down the gap to him. Another battle on track again is still... it's not Masters. Oh, it is Masters. Masters getting lapped there by Absmeyer, which was just toggling or putting up that there was cars on track having a battle. So they're not actually battling for position. Heinrich Hutting and Jason Isherwood are, though. And down the start-finish straight, this is a battle for 22nd and 23rd. So all through the order, we have battles. And right now, we see Isherwood trying to go around the outside. Hutting in the McLaren, of course, Isherwood in the Bentley. And both of them here trying to improve their positions before the end of the grand final here today.
Yeah, with the pit window open, it's only 26 minutes until that pit window closes. So the guys have really got to plan out their strategies here. Isherwood really hard on the attack to Hutting. And not often you could say the Bentley is taking on the McLaren, but definitely having a bit of a rough time here. And Hutting really doing everything he can to hold off Isherwood. And I know the Retro Sim Racing guys are also looking forward, not only just for ending off RaceFace on a high, and Isherwood giving Hutting a bit of a rough one there.
A little bit of a roughage coming out from Isherwood as he slams on by through the Degners. And I was going to just say, it's a little bit, naughty stuff coming out from the back of the McLaren, and Hutting getting onto the brakes in a wet spot just sends the McLaren onto the green stuff to the hairpin, and that's going to allow Isherwood to get by. I was going to just say, Isherwood has yet to go into the pits. Hutting has. Hutting doesn't need to feel the pressure from Isherwood, could sort of just let him get by, know that he still has to go into the pits. But yeah, it wasn't even, it couldn't even get to that stage. The Degners was where Isherwood sort of put some elbows out. Hutting got wide, did a good job to keep it in control, and unfortunately coming up to the hairpin was where he missed those braking points and kind of lost out down the order a little bit. So let's see if we can find another on-track battle. We'll quickly just look at Senarin going into the pits. So this is one of our top 10 in the order going into the pits. That's going to allow Bertus Hugo to temporarily stay out and better his top 10 position. Of course, Bertus last week at Kyalami had a phenomenal race, and he's setting up to do the same sort of thing here. So it's all about that consistency at the end of the day.
Well, definitely. And I saw also we got Wilkin in the pits. So this is giving Patterson a run to try and open up a bit more of a gap. If Pedersen can start climbing a bit up through the ladder, he may have a better chance of going for that championship. Hendricks really battling around with that Ferrari, but Hugo keeping it consistent and making his way around the circuit. Vogel also making his way around. King really showing what he can do as he heads into the spoon, and definitely pushing as hard as he can, touching a little bit on the grass here, a little bit unsettling the car, but is trying to carry as much momentum as possible to go after Patterson, who is 8.9 seconds, sorry, 9.4 seconds ahead, and it's really going to be quite a tricky one to do. But King hasn't pulled in the pits. Patterson has not pulled in the pits, and going a little bit for a late game there, hoping to get a quick in and out. But the longer they stay out with the tires as they are, they might run into bigger problems. And as you can see, Patterson going off that dry line. As you brought up, the car's really struggling a little bit with tire temperatures, and just trying to cool it down as much as possible. But you've got to be careful coming off the wet line. Putting it back onto the dry line can unsettle the car and cause it to slip out on you as well. So a little bit of a challenge there. Masters and Rowe going after each other once again. It's the two pinks that are going to try and chase their way up through the grid.
I mean, they're not even in the same sort of position. Masters is in 20th at the moment, having served his pit stop, with Rowe staying in 9th, needing to still go in. So Rowe doing the right thing, letting Masters get on by. Masters actually just cutting through on the chicane there. Might be getting a little in-game warning from the stewards. Rowe now going to go into the pit. So you can see the team communications coming out there. Rowe just letting Masters by so that they don't fight themselves into the chicane. He's going to be ducking into the pits, as does Hugo. So a lot of the guys now starting to do these pit stops. Jason Absmeyer going to stay out, so that's going to give him that temporary first place, but that is all in vain based on the way that the pit stops run. So Absmeyer going to have to go into the pits, doing a big drifterino out of Spoon as he makes his way down the back stretch. Kieran Patterson also still needs to go in. King needs to go in. Vogel needs to go in. And then we've got, of course, Kruger, who is the first of our drivers who has served his pit stop, coming around and just having a phenomenal hot lap session for himself. I don't think he's seen other drivers that have been anything other than blue flagged drivers in front.
No, he's had an incredibly clean race, and he's just got to keep the momentum up and keep his nose to the grindstone and keep the car on the black stuff. But definitely going to be a big change up, and I'm sure that you got Patterson, who is really pushing hard, King as well. It's basically a guessing game. I mean, when you come down into the car, you as a sim racer, you're not seeing who's pitting, who's not. You kind of got the visor down, you're just racing whoever's on the circuit. But you know, you got to think, with 41 minutes left on the race. And
oh, sorry to interrupt you. Masters just getting a nice little beautiful bit of pressure onto the back of Pirelli there, and forcing Pirelli wide into the starter Spoon. And that's that corner that we just say can make or break a lap, right? And you see why. Because Pirelli runs a little bit wide, and that's just given it right back to Masters. So Masters up into 19th. Pirelli holds a new little badge in 20th. Probably not going to be happy with it and wanting to fight back for it, but going to be a difficult man to chase down old Masters in that Porsche. It isn't the greatest balanced car here in the wet, but most certainly is seeming to get the most drive out of it. Just look at that difference in exit speed coming out of the final corner, and Pirelli has been sort of left in the dust, or should I say the rain spray.
Yeah, that's definitely it. It's going to be a bit of a difficult one for Pirelli to try and catch up to Masters. Masters got some huge pace on the car as he's now chasing down Hugo, lying in 10th place. Well, that's Rowe chasing down Hugo.
Rowe, yeah. So and, his teammate.
Yeah, no, you could see Hugo really battling with that Bentley, and Shimmerin moving out the way a little bit.
No, but this is, that's a battle for position there. Sennerin and Hugo for position, 10th and 9th. 9th for Sennerin. Hugo, though, might be alongside 130R. The commitment to the inside is there. Hugo's got it done. and a beautiful overtake, taking advantage of Sinneren's misfortune out of the back of Spoon. And Rowe also seems to have noticed that the Sinneren's blue Bentley is struggling just a little bit, and Gab is also there to keep them honest. So, I mean, this is 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, all having gone into the pits with 40 minutes of racing, all fighting on track or for position. And Gabbe and Rowe, again, just using all of the track in the background there as they go down into the first and second corners.
Now you can see Gerber and Rowe having a little bit of a dance with one another as they're moving back and forth down the circuit. Gerber is just trying everything he can, looking for just a kink in the armor of Rowe. But Rowe is driving one of the widest cars around the circuit to make sure that that Porsche stays behind him. You can see a little bit of the battle scars on the front of the Porsche of Gerber. But Gerber tries to look up the inside every single time, but just loses that little bit of drive. Trailing off as well, falling down. He spun out, and unfortunately that's not what he wanted in the Lamborghini as the guys blast past him. Gerber still lying in that toe, goes a bit wide. Rowe getting a better drive in the Ferrari as he moves his way up to the hairpin. Now this is all about your braking markers. You can try and carry as much momentum out as possible. Gerber doing everything he can, late braking. Buck also chasing down in the background, seeing that there might be an opportunity for him as they make their way up to the top. Very, very close racing. I mean, these guys have been going all out with only 37 minutes left of the race, and definitely one heck of an exciting Suzuka race, especially for the final round of RaceFace GT3 Championship Season 2. And I gotta say, this is turning into quite a bit of fun.
Masters making the mistake. He was trying to get close to Noah Hendricks. Masters in the background. He's actually collected another car as well. So Masters, a big mistake coming out. He is making his way through the order nicely. Patterson going to blast on by. And that is our 4th place driver, Patterson, getting through cleanly. But unfortunately for Keegan Masters, it proving to be a little bit too much, the pressure there. And he's had a big mistake that's cost him all of the hard work that he's been making up through that. Not too many positions, but, to catch back up again is where it all comes down to. So Sinneren is going to hold 1 position over Masters, so he has lost out to him, but should be able to recover quickly enough. Of course, Masters does have the pace and is sort of out of position down in this position of the field, so he just needs to be careful in what he does. You can see he's driving quite aggressively in trying to make sure that the other drivers are aware that he is most certainly going to take a move if you leave it open. And out of Spoon, that's exactly where he will do it. So we'll pull alongside with Sinneren. Doesn't quite have the space to move across just yet. Look at the Bentley drag the Porsche. Now they're going to go side by side into 130R. Very wide from the Bentley. Very, very wide. He's going to pay extra to get back onto the circuit. And it will be Masters' inside line. And a very brave Sinneren to even attempt a move there.
Well, the thing is, Sinneren didn't have much opportunity. He was either going to back off and have Cutley chasing him down, or take the risk and go right up against Masters. But Masters really aggressive driving there, and I think it's a bit of frustration on his side that's causing it. But as you can see, Rowe and Hugo still duking it out between each other. Rowe getting a little bit of a slide, managing to catch it, getting it into the slipstream of Hugo, battling their way around. This is 8 and 9. Rowe trying to look for a bit of a drive on the inside line, but Hugo carrying that momentum through and now heading onto the back straight. Will Rowe be able to use the slipstream, get lined up side by side as they head into one of the trickiest parts of the circuit, in my opinion. You can outbrake yourself, you can lose a lot of momentum, and now heading into the chicane, which used to be sponsored by a watch.
Yeah, so Daniel Rowe getting the move done there. Hugo not feeling too confident out of 130R. And of course, Rowe just going up on the outside and getting by before needing to go into the chicane there. So a good bit of driving from Rowe. I think Hugo also just accepting that Rowe, potentially the quicker driver, and not wanting to put himself under undue pressure with 34 minutes left of racing. Still plenty of time for things to change up. I see that Jason Isherwood has been issued a stop-go penalty as well. So I believe potentially speeding in the pits would be the cause of that. So Isherwood needs to go in and serve that. So a couple of guys here not having the greatest of races, and a couple of guys having the races of their lives. Brandon Kruger being one of them. Just a phenomenal drive in the Lexus. The rain loving it, and Suzuka here yielding all of the results that he could have possibly wanted at this stage of the race. And of course for him, it's just going to be about making sure that he takes it all the way to the checkered flag, doesn't do any silly mistakes, doesn't throw it off unnecessarily. He can essentially just continue to cruise around and just make sure that he secures that. Jason Absmeyer in second place. You can just see how big the gap is between the two of them. I mean, it was almost the Degners for Brandon Kruger, and our second place driver Jason Absmeyer here only just going through into the start of the S curves. Kieran Patterson, he holds down third place. Of course, this is currently ahead of he needs Charles and I believe Bruno to drop out, not score points, and him win the race or something like that, for him to get the points to draw this out. He has 135 points, so theoretically he would have to win the race. Yeah, so if he won the race and the other two didn't score points, then potentially the championship up for grabs. But as things stand, Charles Wilkin in 6th. He's at second on the championship, is only 8 points behind tying with Bruno. So if he just finishes 9 points ahead of where Bruno finishes, he would be the championship winner.
Now
right? I've done the maths semi-correct?
That sounds all correct, but definitely the championship is wide open, and definitely not what we expected actually to happen. We didn't expect Bruno to lose it out, in lap number 1, and it's definitely turned into a big turn event. As you can see, Isherwood also having a bit of a battle there, right in front with Hutting once again, and Wilkin just has to try and get through the two cars as clean as possible. But as you know very, very well, G, is if you're a faster car trying to get in the middle between a massive dice, you're putting yourself at a massive risk if they don't see it in the rearview mirror.
Oh yeah, I mean, you have to make sure that the driver that you coming up or approaching is very much aware of what you are doing. Hendricks here is, for example, being lapped here by Patterson, and Hendricks going to, I believe, try and just move out of the way here for Patterson to get by. Yeah, so a good bit of driving from Hendricks, pulls all the way down, and that's what we're talking about, bit of driver awareness. So it's not just driver awareness on the car that you're approaching, but also knowing where you stand relative to the cars on track. Masters and Pirelli are two cars on track having a battle themselves. So, you've got leaders kind of coming through cars that are themselves on track fighting for their own relative positions, and having to be very aware of the driving that they're doing to make sure they do it cleanly. Otherwise, it ends in disaster for everyone, and that's not what we want to see.
No, definitely. And I got to say, from the beginning of the season till now, the drivers have just been getting better and better and better. No matter what conditions were thrown at them, they just stepped up their game every single time. And even having names that you didn't think could get to the front of the field, like King, has been climbing up through the ranks and showing what he can do. I mean, it's been a brilliant season with RaceFace, this GT3 championship, especially coming right down to the last race of the season. How do you feel, since you've been through and it's like your little baby? What's your thoughts on the drivers and this entire season of RaceFace?
Yeah, I think the progression is something that I definitely would like to, touch on at first. Drivers have really stepped up their game and made sure that they bring what they can to the table. And it's week in, week out of practice. It's time commitments to be here for races, and it's it's all about that sort of dedication and community that goes down. It's dedicating time to be a better driver, to learn from mistakes, to handle situations, to learn to deal with pressure, to stay in lobbies when things go wrong, to see the end of the race out. It's all those small things that were, things that in previous seasons in other racing events that I've done were all things that people had. So, it's all good to see that drivers are here and committed to improving their driving.
No, it's absolutely amazing. We can't also forget our race fans that have been sticking with us and giving us some awesome feedback, and also getting involved in sim racing themselves. And I think that's also one thing to point out. Really going and losing it into the wall there with Ferrari, not a happy camper as he goes off the circuit. But it's definitely it's turned into quite a fun little thing. And I mean, esports have grown around the world, and South Africa has really shown what they can do, and pushing into these bigger races. And I gotta say, the drivers are absolutely top notch. And this is just going to be, I think, next season is going to be one to watch out for, as we're going to have new faces coming in, old faces returning, and even more challenges for the drivers to face.
Absolutely. The race fans that have joined us, all the comments and the love and support that you guys spread and share with us is appreciated. But a special mention to the drivers, the stars of the show, of course. Without them, we wouldn't be able to broadcast the races and have such awesome battles on track. And it just goes a long way. Everybody does a little bit, and suddenly you come up with these great championships and fights all the way to the very end. A big shout out to RaceFace, of course, and Bertus Hugo, the man who gave me the opportunity to get involved with RaceFace. I love what he does with his community, and there's so many cool things that are coming. I've been in talks with him. I cannot release the details, but I can tell you guys it is epic, and the infrastructure continues to expand, and hopefully more racing, more broadcasts can come to you guys, and we can continue to grow the space. We're by no means the only people doing sim racing in South Africa. There's plenty of other leagues around as well. The Sim Race South Africa guys have been doing massive work for sim racing too. Dominus Gaming in the past has done amazing things. I know that their season currently isn't started yet, but Monday Night Racing on Mondays for guys to get into the sim community. ATK running their league in collaboration with the Kyle Army 9 Hour. There's just big infrastructure going across the board in sim racing, and for me, that's what I wanted to see when I left traditional esports. This is what I left it for, was to do stuff with cars and racing. And I'm by no means experienced in real life motorsports. Stephen, you know this the most. I see Bruno flying off the track in the background. I hope that is not a disconnect coming out for him. And I think that it potentially was. So Bruno, who is running around in 17th after dropping down, our championship leader, seems to have dropped connectivity from the race here, which is a massive shame.
No, definitely not what
massive
he wants.
Shame.
No,
It's I mean, I can't come across with any bias on those kind of things, but from a White Rabbit standpoint, it's a sad day to see where Bruno started and where things have gone for him. And unfortunately, that's sometimes part of the racing that we've got here. It does, however, highlight other drivers such as Sean Buck here from Logistical Nightmare, having a great race in the rain here, currently sitting in 12th place and hunting down Grayling in that Lamborghini. And I believe, when you're chasing down a driver who you've seen make mistakes before, I know that Buck has seen Grayling struggling around with the Lambo. It comes down to that mentality and knowing where you can make the move. And if you just keep focused, those tenths turn into that gap opportunity to then be able to overtake. And Buck doing exactly what he needs to do at this stage of the race. Stephen, do you want to run us through a full order? I'll pan us through the grid. Buck making a big mistake as we jump away from him.
So first place, we got Kruger, who's having an absolutely clean race. Absmeyer lying in second place, and he's really trying to make up a bit of ground. Patterson really chasing him down, and lying in 3rd place. Then we've got King lying in 4th as he makes his way around the circuit. 5th is Vogel, who's just trying to keep it clean and consistent. Wilkin charging his way through. Jason Gray lying in 7th place. And then we've also got Rowe in 8th. Hugo chasing him down in 9th. Herber in 10th. Jason Kraling in 11th place, who's not having the best of runs at the moment.
Johannes.
Kraling.
There
Sorry.
we go. Before they shout at us and think that everyone's called Jason in sim racing.
Then we've got Buck in 12th, Krobler in 13th, Von Mansberg lying in 14th, 15th is Masters, who's definitely not a happy camper at the moment, Shimmering lying in 16th, Pirelli in 17th, Hendricks in 18th, 19th is Hutting, and he's happy to be away from everyone. Berger is lying in 20th position. 21st is Isherwood, still battling his way around with that Bentley for the Retro Sim Racing. Strauss sitting in the pits at the moment, and definitely we're having a bit of a fun there. Hugo having a ton of fun. But you also alluded to something in the last race that I think we've got to bring up. Around this circuit, around Suzuka, RaceFace on the 19th is having an absolutely insane run, which you can see these pro drivers jumping into, and that is none other than the 6 hour of Suzuka.
Yeah, 6 hours of Suzuka. It's been announced. Team registrations are open up to teams of 3. If you guys want to get involved, it's in collaboration with Medal State. So you head over to the medalstate.com website and you can sign up your team there. If you have not, definitely do so. We'll be bringing you some broadcast action. I've roped Stephen into potentially joining me if he's not thrown himself into a sim racing team himself. I have to teach my Padawan here that unfortunately when you become a sim racing commentator, suddenly the driving opportunities become few and far between, and soon you get lapped by absolutely everyone. So I'm just preparing you for the where it goes. Once we start the commentary journey, the number of times that we get to drive just reduces and reduces and reduces.
Well, I'm used to slideshows, so it's fine with me.
Okay,
But,
so
I mean,
yeah,
if that doesn't tickle your fancy, guys, how about this? Rog has actually gone, along with Medal State, along with RaceFace, has actually chucked in a prize pool that if you come into 1st place and working with your team, there is a bit of a help for this current time as well. Let's add a bit there, put a bit of oil on those gears there. But definitely going to be a tricky track, 6 hours, and as you can see, Hendricks sliding out, and Wilkin taking the opportunity to get a clean pass. Wilkin lying in 6th place, also looking to join in with the 6 hour. Jason Gray as well. And something to note about the Retro Sim guys is they're also racing in the 24-hour Spa on iRacing as well. So the guys are really working hard. And so guys in the chat, go and put into this. It's worth having a ton of fun, and see if you can join up in a team and survive the 6 hours of Suzuka. And as it's been alluded, which I am going to do some carte blanche on, lots more to come from RaceFace. So keep your eyes peeled to the YouTube channel, keep your eyes peeled to the Facebook page, where a lot of the information does come out on RaceFace. So keep an eye on that, folks. And we've only got 20 and a half minutes left of this race. And every car has pitted. Now it's all about surviving till the end. And you can see that Kruger is just happy. He's working his way around. Doesn't want to push the car too hard. He knows he's got quite a bit of a gap and has to make his way through it. Unfortunately, White Rabbit Gaming having a bit of a rough run there. Rowe in the Ferrari having a ton of fun. Part of the G4 Sim, building simulation rigs in South Africa. Johannes Railing in that Lambo, getting a little bit unsteady, and Krobler chasing him down.
Absolutely. We mentioned it a little bit earlier on. Of course, Railing has been looking very twitchy in his Lambo in the wet. Bego Krobler has been looking very comfortable in his Mercedes. So, with those two things said, and their sort of relative positions in 11th and 12th, I expect a very interesting battle to continue to brew. It's not quite there yet. It's been sort of put on ice every now and then. I think that Grobler is looking for a very safe place to make this move. Doesn't want to go in and pick up a penalty after all of this into the final round. So looking for the opportune moment to pounce and getting a good exit, it looks like, out of Spoon. This could be the moment that Bego Grobler's been looking for. Kreling is going to, look at him, hold the inside line from the beginning. He does not want Grobler to go, but this is going to force them to go side by side. Once again, 130R is where we're going to look, but just look at the momentum coming out from that Mercedes, and a good bit of driving coming out from Bego Grobler, and Kreling losing out hard there as he chose the wetter, slower line, and the dry line grip just allowing the Mercedes to shoot on by.
Yeah, Kreling really struggling with that Lambo, and it just seems like he hasn't got quite the setup for it. Very aggressive. When it wants to go, it goes as fast as it can, but it just doesn't like going offline. Hugo, being true to the name of the Bentley, also known as the Boatley more often than not, having a bit of a fun run with it as he battles his way around the circuit. Kerber in the Porsche chasing him down. Kruger trying to make his way through back markers as quick as possible. But you can just see Kerber just doing everything he can in that Porsche. But unfortunately, the Porsche just isn't as stable as the Bentley at the moment. But Hugo going incredibly wide out. Kerber as well trying to go and get as much momentum out of the hairpin as possible as they head towards Spoon. And this is going to be one heck of a battle. I think it's going to brew out to the end. Now, with only 17 minutes and 40 seconds left, what do you think? What can you see as a battle that's going to happen?
I mean, I'm not the Wizard of Oz, and I can't foresee the future. I do know that sim racing has the horrible sort of habit of just throwing spanners into the works left, right, and center. For how things stand at the moment, of course, the mid-pack battles are really where things have been the closest. I think, all the way from 8th until 12th is something that is very much in the air at the moment. And then maybe down from, 15th and 16th, you've got Senarin and Masters only 5 seconds apart. Masters obviously needs to chase von Mansberg, who's 20 seconds up the field. So that would be interesting to see if Masters can get up to the back of the number 977. But up at the front, I don't think things are going to change too much. I think that Brandon Kruger is really showing his sort of ability here in the rain. I think that, he's done what he's done for this amount of time. And it's not going to be a state of mentality and just getting it to the end. He's almost not had to deal with anything. And for him, it's very comfortable. I stand to be corrected, at the same time. Leading a race is difficult, and you have no idea. Noah Hendricks running very wide out of Diagonal 1 onto the grass in the background there of the shot with Kruger, and that's going to allow Rowe to get by. I don't believe they were battling for position. I believe Hendricks was a 20th position car there, but luckily does manage to still keep it on to the black stuff after the Diagonal 1 runoff. It's something that you want to keep away from the curbs as much as possible. So if you are going to go off in these stages, try and not pick up damage. The amount of time that you can lose trying to nurse a damaged car around for 15 minutes is absolutely awful. So, yeah, I think the front order, not too much change. Even down between second and third, Jason Absmeyer leads on Kieran Patterson by about 14 seconds. So unless a big mistake is made from Jason, Patterson not quite on the pace to catch up to Jason if we look at their last lap times. So Jason's last lap was a 209.5. Patterson's was a 211.1, with the best lap coming out from Jason being about 6/10 quicker than Patterson. So it would rely on a mistake coming out from Absmeyer for Patterson to get up into second. Charles Wilkin, though, is in 6th place. And with 6th place, I believe he's going to take home more than 9 points. And that means that he would then be the championship leader or winner. So it's interesting to see. Charles Wilkin has a lot to lose if he doesn't finish this race. So he's just going to be trying to take home that minimum 9 points and just get the car over the line. So 6th place for him at the moment is perfect as far as my calculations go.
Definitely he wants to try and hang on to as much as possible. And with a lot riding on the line, you can be sure he's starting to get a little bit of a shake on the steering wheel as the timer starts to go down to the last 14 minutes of the race. And definitely one heck of a thing. We saw earlier Herber losing a little bit of the front end through the Degner curve and managing to hold it, but losing a lot of time. And it has to be put back on the chase. But Wilkin has been driving consistently throughout the season and getting this close, 2nd place with a chance to actually win that championship. What a time to be, ending it off as champion last race. And it's just a great start, well, a great end to a fantastic season that we've seen so far. And would be a great motivation and a great thing to have going into into our next season that's going to be starting later this year as well.
Absolutely. I mean, anything that you take over from here goes into that feather in the cap, right? And knowing that you've got a season under the belt in good positions there as well. Shout out to Al Patterson in the chats. How you doing, sir? Good to see you here. Sad to see you not in the racing. I believe you've dropped down to a different division, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I could be mistaken. You could be just observing, but for now, we are sitting and watching the last 12 minutes here, Stephen, of what has been a fantastic season, a closing finale in the rain at Suzuka. I couldn't have asked for anything really more in terms of changing things up. It's just gone almost 6 p.m. here at Suzuka circuit time. Track temperature 17 degrees there or thereabouts, with an ambient temperature of about 15 degrees. The track reads at about 30% in terms of saturation, so the track could get wetter. However, there's a good balance here for grip as well. Of course, we've seen that dry line form up. However, with the consistent downpour that we've had, it's definitely not been as dry as we've seen dry lines get. You know, it can dry up and the rain eases off and a lot more grip comes through. So a lot of the guys not really using the wet patches of the track as much as we saw early on when the rain seemed to have not yet saturated the track, Stephen.
No, definitely. But we've also got one major thing. Patterson has got to be extremely careful. As if we go back up to Patterson, take a look who's sitting on his rear wing. King, lying in 4th place, has been slowly but surely eating into his gap. That Patterson has got to get on a bit of a run there as he gets past Kraling, but King is chasing him down, and you can be sure that the Patterson racing team is going to be telling their driver it's time to step up your game, as King is not lazing around in that Lexus, and we know the Lexus can hold its own in the weight compared to the Porsche. And
Patterson
this
also
is tricky.
Yeah, Patterson also carrying some an extra bit of weight on him, 20 kilos. So that's going to be playing into the mindset as well. And now coming up to some back markers on track, it's going to be interesting to see who gets the better opportunity to get by and not have their time lost. So Patterson definitely getting von Mansberg and Kraeling's respect. They got out of the way nice and early on and allowed him to get away from the attack coming in from King. Down the road from King, of course, would be Vogel. Not quite in the position to be fighting for this, but 5th place for Vogel and Team Tryhard is going to be well acceptable. Kraeling staying wide, allowing King to get by unobstructed as well. Good work from the back markers to make sure that they don't impede on the leaders racing.
Absolutely. I mean, as a back marker, as a professional back marker, I can say in ACC, staying off the circuit as much as possible, and also using indicators to try and show where the drivers need to go. any little support helps. And you don't want to go messing around with the top spec races because they're not in your race. Especially if you take a look, um, Johannes Freiling has his car that he needs to be chasing right in front of him. If he gets into a mingle with the likes of King, it can also mess up his race at the same time. So he's got to be very careful, and you've got to be careful as you make your way through. But Wilkin really having a bit of fun there. You could bet he's got a smile on his dial-up note, but it ain't over till the fat lady sings, and he has to just try and carry his way through. A little bit wide through the corner, and now is going straight up to our triangle, and then heading into turn 18. So 18 corners, a lot of left, right around the circuit, which can be tiring. They've been this race is an hour and 25 minutes with only 8 minutes and 43 seconds left of the race. You can be sure that these drivers are starting to feel it big time. A little bit in the arms, do think a bit in the ankles, but also the mental strain they must be going through, because the focus you need to go around Suzuka is a lot. But to do it in the rain, it's just making a bit of a curveball as well.
Yeah, it's not an easy track, and I think the rain plays a big part in it. I think that a great drive coming out from Wilkin for now in 6th place is going to be enough for us to crown him as our championship leader, and I think that he has that in his mind as well. Just needs to hold this position and get to the line. And sadly for everybody else, this sort of race position isn't going to change up too much, I don't believe. Our race leaders don't have huge or tiny little gaps between them. Jason Absmeyer and Brandon Kruger have had a race almost of their own. Kieran Patterson and Bernard King are down the road. We've got Daniel King and Bertus Hugo. They are split just by 2.5 seconds, which is kind of close on the split board for us. Sorry, 9.2 seconds. I read that wrong on my side before we switched over. But really, there isn't too many on-track positions. Suzuka's sort of claimed its victims in the rain here, and everybody is now just trying to get to the very end. So the last 7 minutes here are going to be critical for Charles Wilkin to make sure that he makes it to the line. I mean, if he disconnects, crashes, doesn't finish the race, runs out of fuel, any of those things, he will not be crowned champion.
And you can be sure that the Sarko esports team will never let him live it down as well. Because you got to remember, it's not just the drivers, it's the family, it's the teams, it's everyone that's put in the effort to get the cars sorted out. And I think that's something we need to also touch on, is it's a team effort. It's also to the families that allow us to jump into our sim seats and especially do this type of racing. So it's something I think we got to also take our hats off to, is to the families that are allowing the guys to drive, and also to the teams for putting in some massive work this whole season and getting these cars sorted out. But Wilkin did everything he can, and you can be sure that the Sarko esports team are holding on with bated breath until they see that checkered flag.
Yeah, I mean, 6 minutes to go. It will be like the longest 6 minutes of your life if you are watching and supporting Charles Wilkin in the championship. Bertus Hugo, another driver that I just have to highlight of having a phenomenal race after race in terms of from Kyalami to here. Currently in 9th place, also going to secure a top 10 finish. A little bit of background here was that Bertus Hugo was a little bit worried about where his pace was sitting in terms of the championship. Of course, he administrates his entire RaceFace organization, and he has a team of guys that help him out as well. But he's the guy that is responsible for who I deal with, my contact person for RaceFace, and to my knowledge doesn't get a lot of time to practice. So he was worried about not being able to compete anymore and potentially having to drop out. But the last 2 races of the season have really given him that confidence to see that what he's doing is right. He's seated in the right place, and you don't have to be the fastest driver on the grid. That consistency can play out as well. I mean, you do have to have the ability to hold it down in a lap, of course, but consistency triumphs over everything else. And Bertus Hugo here, again, just being the star of the show and improving that in my eyes.
And we've also got Krobler, who's been doing absolutely fantastic. And the whole team of Team Wolf has been doing so well all season. And we've also got Abschmeyer right in front, who lies in second place. But I gotta say, Krobler has been a one to watch out through all the race. He gets into some fantastic dices. He really knows how to throw that Merc around the corners, and has got into some very interesting situations that you don't think that the car will be able to stick. But the Team Wolf has been working so hard in getting it all sorted out.
Onno van Mansberg just driving a Porsche in the rain must be a thing in itself, holding down sort of 12th place in doing so in the number 977, a feat for Onno to have accomplished as well towards the end of the season here. A difficult circuit indeed for the Porsche, and in the rain made harder. So a great race coming out there, holding down 12th place, not quite under pressure from Masters, who I believe in terms of raw pace has the ability to catch up. Had he been given a little bit more time, he's just down the road really. If a Mansberg makes a mistake, Masters could jump up, but Masters just being plagued with unfortunate bad luck and circumstances in this race as well, finds himself down in 13th place, out of position for where we've seen the potential of this Porsche driver from G4 Sim place. But unfortunately, like we said before, racing is racing, and it can change in a split second. So with 3 minutes left to go, we are about to get down into our closing laps. Our leader, Brandon Kruger, continues to just increase his lead over Jason Absma, of course, carrying around 50 kilos of ballast from last weekend's win at Kyalami. But Brandon Kruger here is the star of the show when it comes down to having a dominant qualifying, almost 6/10, I believe it was it 6/10? Up on, I actually don't know where he qualified now. I've completely messed up the timings in my head, but I think it was about half a second or 3/10 of a second maybe ahead of where Bruno had set his qualifying time. And then from there has just run away from the battles behind and has just seen lapped or cars that he needs to lap on track. So he's going to come in and do his final lap now. So this will be the second last lap coming to its conclusion as he takes the final curve for the second last time in this race. He will go down the start-finish straight with 1 minute 46 seconds left on the clock, and that will be our final lap.
It's definitely it, and I mean, it's been an awesome thing, and also the guys, we have to put into the effort of the guys. During the whole the pandemic that we've been going in, the guys have been also upgrading their gear and improving the gear to try and become more consistent on the circuit. And it's lovely to see that. And I'm sure from the White Rabbit Gaming guys, you guys have a bit of a story in terms of upgrading one of your drivers. As I see Abschmeyer bringing up that Vulcan went and got a new rig earlier in the season. Well, Jason got a new rig and seems to be really enjoying it, and it has helped him a bit to become a bit more consistent and a bit more comfortable in the sim racing as he lies in second place right here at Suzuka.
Correct. These guys do commit a lot to their sims, and it's a permanent battle of upgrades and what you can add, and there's always new gear coming out. So it's going to be that for the rest of time with sim racing, and that's why it's quite cool that RaceFace has that sort of prize pooled event coming up for their 6-hour endurance here at Suzuka. There's prize money up for grabs and the ability for the guys to upgrade their sim racing rigs and their gear themselves. But for now, Kruger, our race leader, will come down the back straight for the final time here at Suzuka for the RaceFace Season 2 GT3 Finals. It's been a great 10-race season. Brandon Kruger has had an uncontested race here in the wet, His Lexus has performed phenomenally. It looks like it just drove out of the showroom and over the final curve for the final time here in the season. And from us, Brandon Kruger, a massive well done. He crosses the line, has the ability to lift off, go next to the pit wall, and wave to his crew chief. You can't even see Jason in the background of the shot as he finishes the race. So that's an absolutely incredible victory coming out from Brandon Kruger. Second place, Jason Absmeyer here for White Rabbit Gaming will be racking up some of those championship, team championship points. Hopefully will be enough to secure the team championship against Retro Sim Slipstream. I can't even confirm those on the stream. We're going to have to double check it later on to see where things finish. But Jason will cross the line on the second place of the podium, carrying 50 kilos of ballast. A great job coming out in the wet. Kieran Patterson, our third place championship stander, I believe will cross the line in the third place as well. I don't think he'll change his order on the championship standings. I stand to be corrected, of course, but we'll cross the line for third place with Bernard King for Rad Races in that other themed Lexus, coming across in fourth place. Francis Vogel, our first Aston Martin driver for Team Tryhard, had a great race. Gabba had an equally good race, but Vogel definitely the best of the two, coming out and taking home a top 5. A little bit of a damaged looking front end from Vogel. We'll be happy to see the back end of the Japanese circuit here as he goes around the final curve, down the start finish straight, underneath the big Pirelli boards and under the flashing green lights. That will be the 5th place position for our Aston Martin driver from Team Tryhard. And then Charles Wilkin, who I believe will be our championship winner with this finish. Finishing 6th place will secure him, I believe, enough points to take home the championship winner plaque and trophy, or virtual trophy. So Charles Wilkin takes home 6th, and a phenomenal drive coming out from Sarko Esports and taking home the championship victory as well. If I'm wrong on those things, I do stand to be corrected. I was trying to do maths in my head. Jason Gray will finish in 7th place. Daniel Rowe, Jason Gray in 6th, Daniel Rowe in 7th. I could have called a timing sheet because guys are crossed and left before the end. However, there's the final timing sheet for the final time here for the season 2 of the RaceFace season. It's been absolutely incredible from my side. Stephen, I just want to thank you so much for joining, and I'll allow you to add some thoughts.
Honestly, this has been, and I've said it before to everyone, this is the most fun I've had in ACC, and I honestly wanted to pack up the entire game. So big thank you for having me in the commentary box. A big thank you to RaceFace. A big thank you to all the drivers and teams and families, and also to our racing fans that have put in the effort to come and watch us and have a great chat with us. I mean, the RaceFace season has been absolutely phenomenal. Twists and turns throughout the races, from AM to pros, and just to have a well done here. And it's honestly going to be an interesting to see who finished up where. But basing on your points, I've got to say, I'm going to just put it out there, well done to Wilkin for going and unconfirmed yet, getting the championship and getting it to end with the championship. What a way to end this season 2 of the GT3 championship of RaceFace. Honestly, I'm lost for words. I got goosebumps properly, and hopefully one day I'll be able to be as fast as these guys when I'm big and ugly enough to do so.
Oh, absolutely. It's always been a goal to be able to race on these sort of levels. But these guys are just something special at the end of the day, and that's why they are in the pro splits. Guys, thanks again for joining us. I will be back in the commentary booth pretty soon. I will be joining for the 6-hour Suzuka RaceFace/Metal State collab event. Of course, that has got a prize pool as well. So if you haven't entered into that, head over to metalstate.com. Once again, thanks to Stephen for joining me. I'll be seeing you guys around. Thanks, Bartos, for a great season. Thanks to all our drivers for a great season. And from us, that is all, folks. We'll see you soon.
Cheers, and we'll see you next time.
You stole my heart of gold.